In progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 16th, 2025 Finance and Administration Committee meeting. I am Jim Spear. I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Also with us on the committee are Mike Salmonson, Michael Gardini, and Borough Manager Dobbs. And let's start off with approval of minutes for the preceding 2 months. We could do these in order. Did everyone have a chance to look at the November minutes in the packet?
We can just approve them both at once. I move to approve F&A minutes for November 21st, 2024 and December 19th, 2024.
I will second.
Second, so, okay, any comment on the December minutes then, anybody?
No.
Okay, then all in favor of accepting the minutes for both months? Okay, thank you very much, those are accepted. Treasurer's report, Ms. Dobbs.
So you have before you the schedule of bills and all of the other associated reports showing through the end of the year. One of the things I did want to point out is in the end of year summary, it shows the transfer from general to capital fund that was still shown as being in progress, so that did clear through. Which does change our numbers slightly, but other than that, everything is all outlined in the packet. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer.
Questions, anybody?
Nope.
Looks
No,
like
it's
we're
nice.
accustomed to this. Looks
Yeah,
great.
it was nice to see that we had a little bit of bump in income of our taxes.
We collected all our taxes?
Yep.
Yes, and EIT did fare higher than initially projected.
Yep.
So since this is still somewhat of a newer thing, we'll be tracking that as we go forward.
Cool.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on then. We have no presentation items tonight. Action items. Can I have a motion for scheduled bills for general, sewer, solid waste, capital, highway aid, and green fund totaling $518,055.30?
I will move to.
You can just say so moved.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Yeah, let's keep
And
it.
second, okay. All right, Ms. Dobbs, back to you. Anything to say about that?
Right, so prior to his departure, former manager Matt West set up initial discussions with our CPA firm, Barbicane, Thornton and Company, to provide additional services throughout this year. This was already included in the budget for the year under professional services. We do have a contract in hand for up to 4 hours per month to provide additional financial assistance, and that's primarily to aid in the transition as I take over, and additional support services to me as I learn all of the things borough finance related, to provide that extra guidance as we go through. So again, this is up to 4 hours per month. We will of course be billed only for hours rendered in service.
Okay. Do we need a separate motion to approve this, or?
This will be on full council. This is
Okay.
more as an update, but if you would like to make a recommendation, you're welcome to.
Yeah, let's do that after the scheduled bills.
After the scheduled bills, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's finish up with the scheduled bills first, then we'll move on.
I don't see anything in
no
the
questions?
schedule bills that.
Okay. No, that's a
So let's
no.
recommend
Okay,
that.
so,
We'll do Barbicane, Thornton.
good idea. Okay, all in favor of accepting the scheduled bills, or recommending the scheduled bills?
Yes.
All in favor, yes. That is passed, okay.
I'll move to recommend the contract with Barbicane, Thornton and Company for CPA services.
I'll second it.
Okay, we want to discuss?
Alright.
Okay. All in favor? Good. Recommended. Contract renewal with ET&T for telecommunications services.
Right, so this is our telecommunications provider. We have been with them at least since 2021. We have experienced good service with them. They provide us with our hardware and the software for all telecoms, phone service and the like. So the initial contract from 2021 is included in your packet, and then the email from the president of ET&T is included in your packet as well, which does include the same level of service as we have had since 2021, and just including the current rates that they have. So they have gone up every single year. This year will be a 4% increase, so our contract service goes through the end of the month, so starting February 1 will be the 4% increase for a total invoice per month of $696.99.
Does this include our voicemail and that kind of thing?
It does, yes.
Do they set up our voicemail, or can we do that?
They do, yep, they do, yeah. So they have a really good response rate. If you email them, their guarantee is that they will get back to you within 15 minutes. So they do offer, yes, they will set up voicemail, they do voice to text, so you can get your voicemails in an email, that sort of thing.
And we use all that?
We do.
That sounds great.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Other questions? No? Okay. All in favor of recommending that contract, ET&T? Okay. Unanimous. Resolution 2025-02, Board and Commission Appointments.
I'll move to recommend approval of Resolution 2025-02, Board and Commission appointments.
I'll second it.
Good. So we have a list of those.
So are the ones in yellow are new, right?
Right, so let me explain the
Okay.
color coding a little
Yeah.
bit. So we have anything that's highlighted in yellow was an expired term as of December 31st, 2024. And those individuals had requested reappointments. So these were folks who were previously in that position who had terms that were expiring, who requested reappointment for another term. So anything in yellow is going to represent that. And then anything in green is going to represent a vacancy, whether that's an existing vacancy or a newly created vacancy as a result of some, we did have a couple of resignations and some folks whose term expired who did not request reappointment.
I know we were having a difficult time getting hold of Lynn O'Connor to find out if she wanted to be reappointed to civil service. It's showing as a vacancy. Is she definitely not wanting to be reappointed? Do you know?
I believe, yes, I believe so, and I have that on the full business meeting.
Okay.
Let me just double check. So we had a resignation of Michelle Carton from Parks and Rec, a resignation from Jim Cornwell from Planning Commission, a resignation from David Berdow from the Industrial Authority, and then, yes, those folks not requesting reappointment includes Lynn O'Connor of Civil Service, as well as Rebecca Starr from the Human Relations Commission.
Okay.
So that then would show up as green as vacant.
Okay. I did talk to a neighbor of mine about filling filling my spot on civil service, so really, we need to find 2 people, so I will reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. We are accepting applications on a rolling basis until we've backfilled all of our positions. We did receive a couple this week that we will have before council for your consideration in February. One point that I do want to draw attention to is for the HARB. With the resignation of Jim Cornwell from the Planning Commission, the HARB is unique in that it has certain requirements as to what the mix of members must be. So one of those requirements is that there has to be a Planning Commission member on the HARB. Jim formerly served as that appointee. With his resignation from Planning Commission, we now no longer have somebody on the HARB who is a member of the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is aware of this and they are communicating with their members to see if there's interest for somebody to then also join on HARB. That does mean that somebody who is on HARB has to come off because it is a fully staffed board.
Okay.
There is one member on HARB who is no longer a borough resident.
Yeah.
So discussions are with her to see if that would be an amenable solution to have her step down and to appoint a Planning Commission member in her place. You don't, as a point of clarification, you don't have to be a resident of the borough
Right,
to be
right,
on the HARB.
right.
There's a certain number of requirements that have to be residents, but there are non-residents on the HARB, and that is legally permitted.
Yeah.
She's not being asked because she's no longer a resident, but just because we have to meet that mixed requirement of the planning commission.
Right. Makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good.
We also, to point out as well, in yellow you see on planning commission, so we received confirmation from Brian Kinslow. He was our alternate, so we are moving him into Jim's position to fulfill the remainder of his term. And then we did receive an application to serve as alternate, so that is, I'm sorry, I realized there's a typo there, David Greenberg as the alternate.
Okay.
Yes.
Looks good.
And David is actually a planner with the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
All right.
He is. There was a concern raised about a potential conflict of interest because he works for MCPC, who is our planning consultant. He does work for, there's different departments within MCPC. Primarily, we work with the community planning section. So Tim Staub is within the community planning section. Mr. Greenberg is in the county planning section. So while MCPC does work as a cohesive whole, he is not directly involved in the section that does direct consultant work for the borough. But if there's ever, anything that comes up where he would need to recuse himself as it relates to services with MCPC, that can be addressed. I did consult with our solicitor about those concerns, and he did not raise any major red flags that would preclude him from joining the planning commission.
Yeah.
That's
And I know that David also checked with his employer to make sure that they were also okay with him applying for the position as well.
All right. A lot of legwork on this. That's great. Sounds like a plus to me, actually, to have
Yeah.
county.
Somebody who can say, wait, the
Yeah.
county might not,
Mhm.
appreciate that or want that or whatever. It might.
I'm a little biased myself.
Yeah.
Former
Right.
MCPC staff member, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, time to vote?
All in favor of accepting the list?
Yep.
Yes. That is unanimous. Yes. Recommend the list.
I
Okay.
think I will try to talk to Kelsey about maybe trying to highlight some of these vacancies in the newsletter rather than, we tend to have just this block at the bottom of the newsletter that says, oh, we have lots of appointments. And
Yeah.
we talked about like actually highlighting one and talking about what they do, how often they meet,
Mhm.
maybe who the other members are, etc. Just to give people a better sense.
Do you know whether civil service is going to have any impending business? Like,
I mean, unless the police officer resigns now, but I've always thought, under
sure.
the Civil Service Code says that a member of council can serve as on civil service. I always thought it was, and Cindy did for a while, and then she thought, and I kind of agree, it's kind of odd to do that because they're independent actors in the process, and so it's kind of, you can have an undue influence if you're the borough council member showing up and saying, well, during the interview, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, because you're creating, remember, council can pick among the top candidates, so civil service ranks, but actually council doesn't have to hire the person of the highest rank, so it just seems awkward.
Yeah.
I did have coffee with a neighbor a couple of weeks ago about replacing me on civil service, and I thought he was interested. I thought maybe we would see his application. Now that there's a vacancy, I just sent him an email to see if I can give him a nudge.
Hey, double duty for you now.
Yeah.
okay.
I still need to replace me, so.
Okay, last action item concerns Chevy Blazer purchase for police vehicle.
Yes, so this is just more for an information for you item. This was already authorized as an expense in the budget. So this is just to demonstrate that this purchase order has been, is in the works. The purchase order has come through. This cost that you're seeing is for the actual just base cost of the vehicle itself. It is currently going through the upfitting process, which is a separate expense. Again, all of that has already been included in the budget and authorized by council. So this is in the process of being completed, and we're looking at a delivery estimate of potentially another couple of weeks until we have this vehicle in-house.
That is great, and this is an EV.
This is an EV, yeah, so it is a Chevy Blazer EV police vehicle.
Something came up in,
Go ahead.
in public health and safety. You know, they charge on the charger back here in the parking lot. And there have been a couple of instances where the police went to charge their EVs and a member of the public was using the charger. And so we have raised the question of whether we might need a second EV charger actually brought in to the, I don't know what you call it,
The Public Works yard.
the public works area. So that it's not accessible to the public and available exclusively to the police, especially with the addition of this charger. Chief String made a point that they generally, it's not really an issue because they generally don't let the charge go down below 60%. So unless for some reason they were suddenly having to go very far, like, you know, they're staying fairly local. So it's not like they have to drive 3 hours.
They're not going across state lines.
Right. They're not pursued. So, but it is something we're gonna have to think about going forward as we expand our fleet, that we might need to have a dedicated EV charger.
Yeah.
Was that something that came up before? I thought, maybe I'm completely...
Yeah, so there's a proposal to have a fast charger.
Yes.
In the public works yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I think that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's great. I just wanted to recognize that Jeff Eldon, our Public Works Manager, arranged for this purchase pretty much, or at least he spotted the availability of this vehicle. We were otherwise going to have to be on a 1 to 2 year waiting list for an EV of this kind for the police. So we're really fortunate to get it. We're fortunate that Jeff spotted this opportunity, and here it is. That's great. Okay, let's move
So
on
we don't
to,
need to recommend, that's already done.
I think that's already done, we
Yeah.
don't need to recommend it. We're just having a conversation here.
Okay.
Moving on, let's move on to discussion items. Rules and procedures of Borough Council. This is something that that Michael has been drafting for us for a number of months, and he has circulated the completed draft around and received some comments and made some additions.
Yeah, so the comments were mainly fell in the bucket of clarifications of varying different, some of them were just kind of clarifications of terminology. So the relationship between an abstention and a recusal, which we clarified with the solicitor, and I incorporated that feedback in here. Some of them were clarification, some of them were things where we kind of, there's sections where we use kind of parallel structures for provision. So for instance, lots of things in the president provision are parallel to the vice president provision. And there were not many, but a couple small instances where we'd refined one version, and so it kind of wasn't precisely parallel, so we went back and made those kind of clarifications. And then the solicitor had a number of clarifications, just I think that were more to provide legal specificity to some sections, so those were incorporated. The larger recommendation from the solicitor that's relevant to this evening is, so if you remember when we had the discussion over, it used to be that there was a whole section in here that had to do with the public comment. And so we kind of thought that it made more sense for the public comment section to live separately. It's easier for residents, rather than wading through the rules of council, to just have one document that lives on its own for public
Sure.
comment rules. And it's easier for future councils if they want to revisit the public comment rather than having to reopen the bear of the rules, they have that as a separate document. So we kind of had a provision in here that just indicates, hey, there is going to be a separate document for the public comment rules. And the solicitor recommended, well, you have that, you should probably be adopting the public comment rule simultaneously, which does make good sense. So I think that Fred had said, okay, well, we won't take action on this at the council meeting this evening, we will defer that and then try to sync it up, which I think also makes good sense. That'll also give us time to incorporate the solicitor's other kind of like overarching recommendation, which was for some of the terms like chair or president, vice president, yada yada, having those clearly defined, and then after that capitalizing it to indicate that there's a specific definition associated with the terminology. So it's not a substantive change to the substance of the rules, but it is a good practice to just keep it clear and also to let everyone know that this is actually a term that's been defined. So if there's ever any question over what the term chair means. And that had come up especially because in here we had used the term chair to basically mean whoever's presiding at the meeting. But there was actually a little bit of confusion. I think that, when some folks read it, they thought, oh, committee chair, and that was specific to the committees, whereas kind of we were using it in a different sense. So that would kind of clear up that, any sort of confusion over that. I think those were there was a couple other things where, I think we had only mentioned motions for tabling in the section that dealt with, what happens if someone blips out of existence on the screen. Solicitor recommended saying, hey, just even though the rules state that basically any motion that is in order under Robert's rules is good to go, we have a section where we outline different types of motions, for ease of access and example, so putting that in there. So there's kind of other clarifications along those lines. I think that's the main update in terms of revisions that have been made. Nothing should be revised substantively from the last draft that you've all seen. It's mainly just trying to make it as usable and as clear and friendly as possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. We're gonna have some thorough rules. And also, regarding public comment, I think being separate gives us the opportunity to post it on its own on the website or, circulate it for the benefit of the public.
Yeah,
So I think
and
that's
ultimately I think that something that I think we should look at is taking a lot of these sorts of documents and putting them in a binder or a digital binder. And then, as new council members come in, they can have just a tabbed version of it, whether it's a digital version, and then they'll have reference points immediately that they can kind of look to rather than having to kind of feel their way through it.
Yeah.
And I think that'll help for us, it'll help for, for staff or just whoever that will have kind of those things together.
Great,
So I
okay.
think it helps with that as well.
And maybe we'll have some questions at the council meeting tonight too, or if they want to talk about it?
It sounds like we might, so
Okay.
we'll be prepared to,
Great,
incorporate any more feedback at that point as well.
super. Thank you. Thanks for working on that.
Yeah.
Boards and commissions review. This is our ongoing rolling review of every board and commission. I think most of these won't need much review. So
I think we talked about these last time. I don't know.
Human Relations Commission, any update?
No, I still need to get and actually, Maggie, could you get me a copy of the actual statute, the ordinance, the Human Relations ordinance?
Yes.
If you could send that to me, I'd appreciate it. I went looking for it, and I wasn't sure exactly where it was. And if you could just do that for me, then I'll be able to stick the proposed amendment in, and we can take it next month, and
Yeah.
maybe I can send it to you with my proposed revision and the rationale for it.
Okay.
And then we can discuss it, maybe make a recommendation to full council to adopt the change. changes, there's really two.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. In progress. Shade Tree Commission, which is something I'm trying to hack through. Our tree ordinance, if you had a chance to look at it, does not really describe what our Shade Tree Commission does in reality. So I think we need to have a look at that and make sure that both that Shade Tree Commission has the support under ordinance that it needs to do the kind of work that it does in support of the trees in Narberth. And also to make sure that we're not, if you read, the way it reads now is that Shade Tree Commission pretty much has dominion over every tree in the right of way. And so at the very least, I think we need to clear up our terms of what constitutes the right of way for the purposes of shade tree purview. So
We may also want to look at, because I know that this, I think, had come up with 2AA, which is on our council agenda. We may also want to look at, I think the rules regarding like what things technically have to go to Shade Tree Commission are like really broad.
yeah, so I was talking to Rick about that actually this afternoon because there's a question about a land development plan at the moment. We do have a landscape architect, I believe, on contract
We do,
through Yerkes,
yes,
who is also able to certify landscape plans.
right. And that makes more sense
Yeah.
to me as a process.
Yes.
Like the Shade Tree Commission
So-
is more of a policy body.
Yeah, so we do need to sort out when something goes to the Shade Tree Commission for review, if at all. And when the landscape architect review is sufficient. I mean, yes, we need to figure that out.
Yeah, so we can have discussions with Rick and Shade
Yeah.
Tree folks.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Maggie has ideas about land development process.
Yes, I would just recommend that any conversations that we have that would differentiate between Shade Tree Commission and what the landscape architect would be required to do in various situations would just be compared against what our ordinance calls for right now. Specifically, the subdivision land development ordinance does require that plans go before both an LA and Shade Tree Commission. The purposes are different. There's obviously requirements in Saldo as to what constitutes a shade tree, and then kind of bleeding off of that, tree replacement calculations, which is more of an engineering review. We're looking at tree, caliper of trees removed, versus what that would then come to in terms of new trees as replacements. So that falls more under the engineer's bucket and not shade tree. So just whatever the conversation is, just to make sure it jives with our existing ordinances so that we're not duplicating efforts or creating additional areas of confusion or congestion in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we would be looking at what parts of the ordinance need to actually be cleaned up. So it would be, that's what you were saying, right? So it wouldn't even just be a process-oriented thing, would it be actually like giving some thought to
Substance.
the system itself?
Well, probably the land development ordinance is not something we do in this committee,
Right.
Right.
but
Right, I think the issue for us was that the terms on shade tree literally gives them a ridiculous amount of power that I think is not intended, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the primary issue that we have to address with this non-definition. of
There are two different things. There's the so-called tree, the tree ordinance,
Right.
which has nothing to do with land
Right.
development. And then there's the land development
Right.
saldo. So they're two different
Right.
processes.
I guess, well, we have to look at the saldo to see, are the,
Yeah, I don't,
there shouldn't be an overlap, I
right.
mean, the ordinance, the shade tree ordinance, I haven't looked at these yet, but I'm
Okay.
guessing that it kind of cross-references what their duties are
Nope.
under the saldo. Oh, it doesn't at all?
Not that I've,
Okay.
Some of those provisions do not play.
Okay, then we gotta look at this like.
That's a bigger,
Yeah.
that's a
Okay.
different.
I don't
So it
think-
seems like we gotta look at this from.
I don't know if we should
square-
be reviewing the saldo in F&A here.
No,
Should we?
no, but
Probably not,
Yeah.
but
only
once
to,
you start poking here,
Yeah.
things come out over here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
anytime you noodle around with the provisions, say in the shade tree ordinance, because the ordinances cross-reference each other, you need to look at it holistically wherever those regulations
Okay.
would be triggered.
Yeah.
you just
I would
gotta
say
make sure you
fig-
don't create a conflict.
Figure out, like, to the extent that we don't fully understand the existing system, figure out the existing system first, then figure out what it kind of should be, and then we can look back and figure out how you would get from A to B. Would be the process I would
I
suggest.
don't have the sense, and maybe Maggie, you can correct me, I don't have the sense that right now, in terms of getting, land development approvals, that they feel like they're tripping over each other. Like, and really, we should be talking to them to say, do you guys understand what your lane is and what your lane isn't? And
I think
work
it's
on
less
that.
about that. Here, I'll give you an example. I think it's less about that, and it's more for some things. It seems like do all of these things need to go to the Shade Tree Commission? So, for instance, just because I was looking, this hasn't hit us yet, but there was some sort of like a lot line change. It's going to be upcoming. Okay, that's a re-subdivision, right?
Mhm.
So theoretically, under the rule of this, that homeowner has to go to the Shade Tree Commission because it's a subdivision. But they're not actually doing anything, they're just changing lot lines, by the way I read the code. So that's what I'm saying, is like, it's not, so some of it's not even just a matter of like, does everyone understand?
Right.
Some of it's like a matter of, do some of these things really make sense?
Yeah.
And if I can build on that just briefly, it has to do more with the administrative side, really, less than making sure that Shade Tree Commission is clearly defined on what they need to review. So it's more just procedurally how we look at things and how we delegate reviews to the various boards and commissions. So, Michael and I were discussing this kind of separately, just outlining that as a procedural element, how we process land development plans, subdivision land development plans, and kind of how they then get process reviewed and distributed to all of the various boards and commissions for review, making that kind of a clearer checklist.
Okay.
So I think some of the work that you're discussing would be beneficial in cleaning that up. And the main beneficiary is going to be staff.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also smooths out the process for applicants, because then we're not stuck in a situation where, they need to be requesting these waivers maybe, or I don't know, whatever the case is, it will be beneficial
Okay.
to make it
Smooth
clear
process.
as to what the process is, who's doing what, when things get triggered,
Yeah.
so that there's less questions when things come in and it's all in a checklist.
Yep, okay.
Okay, so what should we be doing until the next meeting? Just digesting the tree ordinance and,
Yeah, I think so.
That's
I think
yeah,
I need
that's
to
a
look at
longer-
that ordinance itself, right?
right, okay.
Something else to send us.
No,
Tree ordinance?
Yeah.
I have a tree ordinance.
That's- yeah, that's on- that's
You
on mine.
send it to me then.
It's on E-code, but I can send you the link.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on from that for now. And then the other boards and commissions, so as I was saying, a lot of these will not need this level of review, probably
Yeah.
most of them.
Yeah.
So that's to look forward to. Communications plan. This committee was tasked with coming up with elements of communications plan to improve communication, to public-facing communication, all kinds of communication. So it's been a sort of a rolling brainstorm session for a couple of months now. And one of these is our guidelines for public comment, which is this thing, which is on the SharePoint, which I've invited everyone to give comments on SharePoint. But I printed it out just so we can have it in our hands. So This comes from a draft I made, excuse me, a couple of months ago. I based it off of the Borough of Conshohockens guideline for public comment. If you remember, I'd also had visited a few other boroughs in their council meetings to check out their public comment period, and there's also a chart on the SharePoint here somewhere about the number of minutes allotted and and how they do things in other boroughs. So I think we can, at least that part of it, I think we're mostly in line with what other boroughs offer in terms of number of minutes allotted. Now, we have a bunch of comments here about structure of these guidelines. I was hoping that these could serve as not just sort of rules of public comment, but also sort of a guideline for someone who wants to make comment and sort of what to expect when they get here, what kind of answers, sort of manage expectations a bit about what happens when people get here to make a public comment, because often they don't receive the answer that they're looking for right away, and it can be confusing.
They feel like we're not being open about it.
Yeah, like, someone's here who's here for the first time and brings up a new problem or something, that public comment is not often set up to be a back and forth or, it's sort of a redress period. So I hope to sort of structure these in a way that would manage people's expectations, and, if public comment is not a place for question and answer, where should they really be going for question and, where should they be bringing their concerns?
Yep. Or how does staff follow up, right, where appropriate.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I kind of didn't like the wording of number 6 because it kind of sounded harsh at me. Does not call. I think it should be, may not call on staff. Or, will not necessarily call on staff or professionals to provide.
This one is lifted directly from Conshohocken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so all of this I feel like is
Yeah.
we're gonna end up massaging a lot.
Yeah, okay. I just because to me, sometimes we do, sometimes people have a very particular question on, an item on the budget.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? And, then it's appropriate to turn to say, can you explain what that item is or clarify, especially during budget presentation, it's not unusual for people to ask very specific questions that it would make sense for the manager to respond to, just if something's not clear to somebody. I don't want, I guess my point is that I don't want to make it like a black and white rule that we never respond, because we do.
Right.
Yeah.
If appropriate.
I think that's like a global comment that we should incorporate sort of like language through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also don't think we should
Flexible.
we shouldn't necessarily be micromanaging the president about how the president wants to.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's
yeah.
that's what I've seen. I mean,
Yeah.
the president presumably knows what's inappropriate
Right.
to respond to or provide more information to.
Yeah.
We sort of, that's why we sort of trust the president to
Mhm.
figure that out. And
I think this is less, or at least I could be wrong. The way I saw these it was going to be something that's less the rules of count, right? That's the
Right.
one.
Mhm.
Yep.
This was more about providing expectations like
Yeah.
Joe
Right,
said.
to the
Right.
public.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
Right.
To your point about giving the exact address, were you here when I was having that conversation? So public health and safety, at least, I've been sensitive to that point. People do say their address, but when I put in the minutes, we have had a bunch of people on the 200 block of Sabine coming to express some traffic concerns. So when I put their name in, I just say 200 block of Sabine.
Right.
I don't put their exact address in the minutes.
Yeah.
I think we just need to know. I mean, there I only care because they obviously have specific input for that block, right? So it kind of makes sense to say, because we invited them to come talk to us, another resident of the 200 block of, say, mine, blah, 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 blah. Other times it's just like, I might not even say 200 block, right?
Yeah, and then I pointed out that this ends up on YouTube anyway, so it's like, it's not exactly private.
I know, but. All the more reason for them to just be able to say, Mike Swanson, Shirley Surfer.
Right.
Just say your street.
Just say your street. I don't think we need, there's no particular reason to know the exact address.
Yeah, I don't really think.
Again, unless you want to say a particular block because we're talking about that block.
Right.
People can volunteer that,
Yeah.
that's totally fine,
Yeah.
it just, I mean, I guess the way, usually this was from Contra
Yeah.
Hawkins
Yeah.
one, where, so it was just the way that they had it phrased in here, I thought, well, that's a little.
We do currently do it that way.
Yeah.
Fred asks for people's name and address.
Yeah.
Well, but I was just mentioning it because it's a similar thing to what Mike was saying with the other thing. I forget where the section is, but it said like, the language was harsher than like,
Mhm.
do you ask for the address?
Must state their
You
name
have
and
to do
address.
this. Yeah,
Yes.
like.
Should.
Are invited to state their name and address. Yeah.
I know.
What about the idea that only residents are allowed to?
I think we discussed this a
We
lot.
did.
We regularly allow, like, we don't tend to get a ton of people from outside Narberth, but we have an entire term for this, right? Near birth is a
Yeah.
known term.
Yep.
And if someone feels strongly enough that they're gonna come here in the snow to a meeting or whatnot, and they want to speak, I think we let them speak.
I think again, this is another one where it's like, we can let them speak. The way I would do it is to flip it to say, in cases where there's a high turnout for something, the president, and his or her discretion can limit it to Narberth residents and taxpayers,
Sure.
right?
I mean, you can. It gets into a thing where it's like, who's a taxpayer is like, XYZ, like anyone can theoretically.
But I want to hear from
But if you're exempt from
I want to
tax-
hear from one of the business owners, right? Even if they're not a resident, if something's going on.
Yeah, no, I'm not
Right.
disagreeing, I'm
Right.
just saying it opens up, I think it ends up being like, you just, cause and then we on council, like, we'll know when folks are speaking, kind of like if they say, oh, well, I'm actually over there, so I think it's not I don't have any concerns that people are gonna be like,
Okay, yeah.
oh, this was the single thing that convinced me rather than the sum totality of the feedback that was received.
Okay, we gotta keep
Uh,
going.
Time, well, hold on.
Yeah.
Time donation. We want to talk
Can't
about
do
that at all?
that.
Do we want to allow for time donation?
No.
No?
The only reason I brought that up is because I've seen that done in a way where, okay, let's say you get 3 minutes, but you just want to donate, you can donate a single minute. So then rather having 2 people speak for a sum total of 6, you can have 1 person speak for 4.
Why not just pass it on to that person and have them
I
continue?
mean, school board, when we've had big issues.
Don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not wedded to that.
They have a 15-minute speech and, as soon as the
Yeah.
timer goes off, the next person jumps in.
I'm not wedded to that.
Good
I only
times.
brought that up because I've seen that. I've
Good
seen it that
times.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm not big on time donation
Yeah.
myself, but.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll just jog through these other comments for now. We can continue making, Mike, you'll make some comments on this too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beep, 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 beep. Residents, taxpayers. And. Right, okay. All right, that's sort of the gist of the substance for now. All right, we'll keep rolling on that. We'll have another draft next month.
Okay.
Let's move on to talk about, hey, can I help you? You gotta,
I was just looking at the map.
oh yeah, go ahead, that's fine, no
That's
problem.
all.
It's all right, we'll continue. AI summaries for council and committee meetings. Okay, now this is something, thank you for entertaining this idea. This is something that occurred to me as something that might be that might fill a communications void we have in town, which is sort of, which is along the lines of civic literacy, and in recognition of the fact that we don't really have local newspapers active in this area anymore. We do not have, we just don't tend to have that headline layer of news anymore that is sort of publicly acknowledged, you know. Yes, people can wait for the minutes and watch the videos. It still takes, you know, in my opinion, it takes a lot for someone to be just fully up on the news of what goes on in borough council meetings. And I thought that a kind of summary that was more easy reading type of summary, a sort of update bulletin style, might be a welcome addition to communications strategy, communications policy. If you see, I've been running the voice recognition transcript of these meetings, such as is going on right now at our meeting. I run those words through ChatGPT, and I say, please give me a summary of this meeting, and it runs, gives a summary. And I've been playing around with the parameters a little bit. I said, okay, now give it to me newspaper style, you know, and it spits out these paragraphs, you know, that read more like newspaper. These are, I passed out you these papers, just as examples. They are not edited, you know, they're not even checked for errors, but
My favorite part is the AI speaking approvingly of the AI.
yes. Okay.
In an innovative way.
I did see it. I wondered where that came from. That's actually sort of funny.
Right. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the idea. Okay, so now I understand there could be concerns with the concerns with productions of official documents, you know, that may or may not be passed prior to the minutes, and you know the minutes of the meeting are the official record. You know,
Yes.
they are legally required to accept the minutes, and that becomes the record of the meeting. These don't necessarily fulfill that. You know,
Forget the word necessarily. They
they
don't.
don't.
fulfill that.
They don't.
It has
And
to
the
They don't.
videos don't either.
Yeah.
Like, I know that that's have come up where folks have
Yeah.
commented on that. And
Yeah.
The minutes are the record.
Right. Well, the
Yeah.
big reason the videos don't is because sometimes the video fails, you
Yeah.
know, and then there's no record of the meeting. There's no video, so we're always going to be reliant on the minutes to be the record of the record of these meetings.
My thought about this is twofold. One is, you know, if we do this for every committee, that's a lot of stuff that's getting out there. Like, where is it going to go? Like, nobody's probably going to look at all of this. And I think my second thought is, you know, before we say we're going to do it, I think maybe we use our committee as the sort of pilot to say, let's do this for 6 months, see, you know, the real concern is inaccuracy, right?
Yeah.
You know, the problem is, even with the disclaimer, if we say, you know, somebody says, well, how come it says in this one thing and your minutes don't say that? Somebody's going to accuse us of doctoring the minutes, right? And even with the disclaimer, so before we say, hey, yeah, let's do this all the time, I would want us to kind of do a 6-month pilot just internally for ourselves and see if,
Just unreleased.
yeah, and just seeing, you know, try and do an accuracy test,
Well, that's no problem. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, just,
Yeah.
you know, we can be the guinea. I mean, I like it, but I suspect other people don't, aren't going to. I know Cindy, you expressing concerns about it. I think Maggie has. You know, let's see if it creates
Okay, yeah,
things that are inaccurate and be like, oh, wait a minute, no, so here's an example where you didn't accurately capture something.
it would always have to be something that's reviewed for accuracy afterward.
Yeah, so I was gonna, yeah, I wouldn't take something like this
So-
and just put it out.
Among the things that I thought might mitigate some concerns are, well, we could pass these along with the, wait a month and pass them with the minutes. It's just another, like a minutes supplement or something like that. Just sort of easier reading version of the minutes.
I think you've hit on like the main thing, which is, I've come around, I used to be highly skeptical of this. And then I used it a couple times and realized that I think that it's actually a good tool, but it's contingent on how you're using it and what you're using it for. I think that's like for these types of things, that seems to me to be the main question. And then once you kind of figure out what that is, you know how best to use it. Is kind of how I've come around to this. But I think it's certainly valuable as a tool in just helping, because we don't have, especially like the manpower to be able to summarize a lot of things.
I wonder if there's, basically, if you're thinking about it from the newspaper standpoint, is there a way, if a resident wants to sign up, in essence, to get a subscription to, like some people are more interested in public health and safety. I'll be honest, probably people are less interested in the nuts and bolts of our community. Just by the number of people who show up at public health and safety versus here, traffic. Anytime people have traffic or parking complaints, they're coming to public health and safety. So, I wonder if there's a way that we'd be able to say, hey, if you want to get the AI newsletter version of public health and safety, you could sign up and then you would just get it.
Well,
Because otherwise, I'm not sure how we're distributing this.
but even in that, right, like we would still need, like, there would have to be a lot of staff time that gets put to like.
Well, that's right. That's what I'm worried about.
See, if we ran this through this committee, it wouldn't be staff time we were taking. It would be,
Oh, where we take responsibility for posting?
how you do it.
Okay.
But I think key would be that we don't want to present this as an official document.
Right. You gotta have, I would actually put the disclaimer at the top, not at the bottom.
And, well, I think it was, someone mentioned that the manager had thoughts on this, so what were?
Yeah, I also want to be mindful of our time this
Yeah.
evening, but the long and short of it is, I want to just be cautious about preparing essentially what ends up being duplicate documents, because the newspaper style takes a certain spin on it that adds a character to what's happening that seems a little bit, could be taken the wrong way. The fact that we already post all of the videos and leave them up. Most municipalities, if they have videos, they take them down after the meeting minutes are adopted as the official record, or they leave them up for a period of a few months and then take them down. The fact that ours live up there, there's a lot of transparency already. The transcript is available. Anybody can just take the transcript and run this through themselves. And then in terms of editing them, making sure they're consistent, putting the disclaimer on, posting them, I appreciate that we have such an engaged membership here. You as a council member being proactive and able to post them. At a certain point, though, if and when you're no longer on council, who takes that over? My concern is setting a precedent that's not sustainable, and it's being done as an extracurricular activity by a member of council who, if that person is no longer able to continue that, then that service goes away, and then now we've created this, if this was a welcome service, then we don't have the ability to maintain it. So I'm thinking about this just from a means of like practical, sustainable, administrative time to do this, because we're not only posting, the agendas and everything beforehand, we're now posting all of the videos afterwards, and now we're gonna be posting these not meeting minutes, and then we're posting the meeting minutes. So we're doing a lot of duplicate
Yeah.
work, so I just wanna be mindful of that.
What do you think of something, say we were to partner with the Civic Association, say, for instance, to put out stuff like this,
I would again caution against that because they are a volunteer,
Yeah.
non-affiliated organization. This is council, this is the municipal government. It's not the same organization. So partnering is fine, but I would not recommend that we put out unofficial, what amount to meeting minutes through a non-governmental means. It is
I
5
think it
minutes
does,
out.
yeah, it sort of dovetails with my concern, which is, who's gonna read this and how's it gonna be, like, it just seems like there's a lot of elements and potential staff time that may not make it worth it. I like it for myself, as an internal document, I'm not sure necessarily.
Okay, quickly,
Oh, that's quick.
are we gonna kill this idea right now, or do you
No,
wanna,
no, no,
or do you
no,
wanna
no.
like do it as an internal
Yeah, I'm gonna do this.
thing for a little while?
I think there's value to the tool, and I think it's just a question of like what that actually means in practice.
Yeah.
So I don't want to because I know that you spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I don't want to like immediately poo-poo on it.
Okay.
But I think that some valid concerns were raised, and I think
Definitely.
we just think through
I
how all
appreciate
those
it.
things
I
intersect.
appreciate that, okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll just
Yep, moving on.
we'll turn down the heat. We're moving on to nothing, right? Last is
Yeah.
public Sir, do you have a public comment for finance and administration?
For financing?
Yep.
No, I don't.
No, okay.
No.
Is there anyone online?
Yeah.
No, no one in these, okay. Then let's have a motion for adjournment.
No, go ahead, Mike. Okay, I move to adjourn the January
adjourn.
16th, 2025 Finance and Administration Committee.
Second, all in favor of adjourning? Thank you, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.